Hi, and welcome to another career life class. Today, we will be learning more about landing a job. In this lesson, we will be looking at 2 interview questions and how you can answer them, as well as learning a little bit about the types of interviews and questions that can and can't be asked. Let's get started. Whether you're applying for your first time job or preparing for your future career, there are some steps that you need to take. So you've already developed a resume. You've prepared a cover letter. You've hopefully got a social insurance number. If not, you can apply online or in person. And this is a 9-digit number that you're required to have to work in Canada. And hopefully you have found a job posting, or when you're ready to, you know where to find them. So again, you get that job interview and you get that first reaction, which is like, fear factor. But if you're prepared and you know what to expect, then it will be less disconcerting for you. So types of interviews, your interview might be one-on-one, so just the business owner or manager might be interviewing you. Sometimes there can be group interviews where you have a panel of 2 or 3 or more people interviewing you. If that's the case, it's really important to make eye contact with each person. There's some really informal interviews where it's more like a conversation, nothing's written down, it's really casual. Sometimes they're quite structured where questions are written out and every candidate asks the same question. Sometimes actually they don't tell you this, but the questions might have points attached to them. So then they hire the person with the highest number of points. So in those cases, sometimes you might repeat yourself a little bit so that you get higher points on each question. Some are really unstructured, and these are generally the more informal ones we talked about. And often nowadays, there are virtual job interviews where, again, eye contact, it's really important, as well as being expressive. You want to smile, nod, look interested, and be sitting up. In virtual interviews, those sorts of things are super important. So there are some questions that can and can't be asked at job interviews, and sometimes this comes down to human rights codes and things you cannot be discriminated against for. So let's take a look at some of the things that can and cannot be asked. So first of all, your age. If it applies directly to the job, you can be asked if you meet the minimum age requirement. For example, some types of servers have to be 19 to get the job. So they may not be able to ask you your specific age, but they can ask you if you meet the age requirements. All right, so they don't ask you for details on your exact birth date or birth certificate, things like that, but they only ask you about your age if it fits within the legal requirements of a job. A criminal record, they can ask you about your conviction record if it relates to the ability to do the job, but they can't ask you about your arrest record. Now, some jobs, such as working with children, will require a criminal record check. It's within their legal rights to ask for this. All right, so disabilities, anything that relates to the ability to do a specific job can be asked, but anything that does not relate to the job cannot be asked regarding disabilities. And they can't ask you about your marital status or your family status. That doesn't impact your ability to do the job, and you can't be discriminated against for that, as well as your national origin. So they can ask if you're legally able to work in Canada, but they can't ask you anything else about your national origin. Same with race, religion, your sex, gender. They can't ask you about that. All right, it's not relevant to your ability to do a job, and you can't be discriminated against for any of those things. So they shouldn't be asking you. Before we get into the interview questions, you want to think like the interviewers so that you can help them make the decision to hire you. So their goal is to determine first, can you do the job? Will you do the job? Will you get along with others in the workplace? This is so important to them. And will you become their worst nightmare, or will you be a positive member of the team? So those are the sorts of things they're looking for when they are interviewing you. So for the next part of your lesson, we're going to imagine you are either going for an interview for an entry-level job that you chose for your customized cover letter, or you can imagine that you're interviewing for a job that you might really like to do for at least the next few years, either in the summer or as an apprentice or in a career that you'd like if you're going from high school to the workplace. And the questions that we're going to focus on today are what are your strengths, or what is your greatest strength? And what is your greatest weakness? 2 fear factor questions that are very common in an interview. And if you follow the tips here and learn the formula, practice it, then you will be able to better nail your job interview. So let's take a look at how to answer the question, what are your strengths, or what is your greatest strength?
I'm Cassandra, and I help motivated professionals build their careers through practical tips to gain confidence. Let's get started. Here's the mistake I see made a lot with this question. As I said in the intro, I use this one all the time, especially with college students, and I will ask, what's your strength? And they will tend to just list off for me a bunch of words, a bunch of strengths. So what's your strength? Oh, well, I'm really organized and I have like really good time management skills. And I think, yeah, I'm a leader. Okay, cool. Like, can you expand upon any of those things? You can't just say that, right? You have to demonstrate it for me. It's similar to why we can't put soft skills on the skills section of a resume. If you said, what's your strength? And I just said, oh, I'm hilarious. You'd be like, you can't just say you're hilarious. Like, you got to tell jokes and stuff so I can decide you're hilarious. But yet people all the time think they can just say, well, communication, and we're going to believe it. So here, that's what not to do. Let's talk about what to do. So the overall best way to do this is to name the strength, give an example of how you're doing it in your current position, how you've used it before, and how you will use it in the future in this job. So first, you're naming the strength, and you really want to think about this ahead of time, right? Just like everything else, we prepare. So look at that job description and see what are the strengths that you have based on that job description. Jot down 1 or 2. Now, think of an example of how you've done that thing in your current position. Or if we're not currently working, how are you doing that in your life at this moment, or in a volunteer position? Anywhere where there's a great example, think of that. Then try and think of another place you use that. Maybe you used it in a different way. So let's go with communication. Let's say in your current role, you have to do a lot of presentations. So you're going to talk about your communication skills and how you use that in giving information to large groups. But before this, I worked in a job where I worked one-on-one with people. And so I really worked on my interpersonal communication skills there. So you're going to give how you're currently using it and then how you used it in the past. Even if it's the same way, talk about how you used it before just to strengthen the strength. So you're going to strengthen the effect of that skill. So not only have I communicated in this position, but I've been doing this for years because I also did it in this other position. And then the clincher, you're going to say how you will use it in this new position. So currently, I use my strength this way. Before that, I was in this other position where I used it in this other way. And the beauty of it is I see it really working for this position in this way. Okay? Because you're looking at that job description, you can see the types of things you need to be doing. And so you can talk about it one more time and say, this is how I would do it here. Y'all, if you do this, this is an awesome interview answer. Now, if you want to do it fast and you think there's 2 things you can highlight, you can do 2, but please no more than 2 strengths. And I will say, if they say, what is your greatest strength? 1, we give 1 and we give really strong examples for that 1. So make sure you're listening to their question. Think through how you want to answer it and answer accordingly. Don't give 3 if they ask for 1, but give 1 or 2, depending on how they ask, with really strong examples of a currently, before, and future.
So on paper or on your device, you're going to write down your response to the question, what are your strengths, or what is your greatest strength? And you'll need this for your assignment. So we have a formula here. And remember, you can choose 1 or 2 strengths unless they ask for only the greatest strength, in which case you'll choose only 1. So you'll name the strength based on the job description. You'll give an example of how you are currently applying that strength and how you've used it in the past. And finally, you'll say how you will use it or how it will help your ability to succeed in the job you are interviewing for right now? So let's pause the video so you can formulate this response. All right, the next question is, what is your biggest weakness? And again, we'll have a little video with some tips and a formula that you can follow so that you know how to answer this question.
For the what's your biggest weakness question, number one, you're not going to give your biggest weakness. And you are not going to give a weakness that is directly related to what you are doing, but you are going to give an actual weakness. This feels hard. This feels like you're laying your cards on the table, right? But they want to see that you're self-aware and know you're not perfect. So what you want to do is you want to give an actual weakness, but one that is not directly related to what you are doing. So for example, if you are in sales, you are not going to say, oh, my biggest weakness is that I'm kind of shy and I just have a real hard time approaching new people. That's not going to work. That's the core of that job, is to go talk to new and different people. So it doesn't work for that. You have to think relative to your situation, what is something you're not great at, and then you're going to talk about how you're working on it. So that is the formula, essentially. State your weakness, how it affects your work or your life in some way, and is a weakness in situations. And then don't forget, you're going to finish on how you're working on it right now. One of the best answers I ever heard for this was from a client who's actually an animator and worked at an animation studio. She was very soft-spoken. It wasn't surprising when she said, well, my weakness is that I'm very shy and highly introverted. Two things that are totally fine to be when you're an animator. It's a pretty independent job in most situations. You're off at your desk drawing by yourself. But she said, I realize this is a weakness because I'm not really connected at work. I don't know everyone as well as I could. So I decided that instead of eating lunch by myself, I would go up and sit with other animators for lunch each day. And from that, it's been great. I've met friends, I've learned new skills because I've heard more of their process and how they do things. And so it's really improved my animation as a result as well. And I'm going to continue trying to get out of my shell a little bit and meet new people. It's a great answer. It's not affecting the core of her work. She can still do her job, but she showed how life got just a little bit better by working on that weakness. My go-to answer is very situational. I am an external processor and I have an opinion on everything. In certain cases, that's great. Oh, I'll brainstorm like crazy. But my answer to this question is always, well, I'm an external processor, I'm very opinionated, and I don't mind sharing opinions because I like bouncing off people that way. However, I've realized it can look overbearing or a little too much when in every meeting when a question's asked, I'm the first to share my opinion. And I can see where that gets hard for others who maybe needed a moment to internally process and think through their answer and maybe wanted to share something else, but feel like they now can't. Because of that, I now intentionally do not answer first in meetings, and I give people a breath, and I wait and try and hear a couple of people's answers before giving my own. That's it. It doesn't say, oh, I'm a horrible person, but it's something I've realized I need to work on because I want to make sure other people have the opportunity to feel heard as well. It's not going to affect my day-to-day and my work, but it does show some growth, which is something you want to prove to this hiring manager. Okay, so to recap before giving my own. That's it. It doesn't say, oh, I'm a horrible person, but it's something I've realized I need to work on because I want to make sure other people have the opportunity to feel heard as well. It's not going to affect my day-to-day and my work, but it does show some growth, which is something you want to prove to this hiring manager. Okay, so to recap, answering the tell me your biggest weakness question, it takes a little practice, but it can be done. To answer it, don't share a strength disguised as a weakness, but instead share a weakness that's situational and will not affect the day-to-day work of your job if hired. And please don't forget to share how you've been working on it and the improvement that you've seen.
So on your paper or on your device, you're going to write down your response to this question, what is your biggest weakness? And remember to share a weakness that's situational and won't impact your day-to-day work in the job for which you're applying. You'll state your weakness, tell how it affects your life in some way, explain how you're working on it right now to show growth and self-awareness, And you can even add how working on it has enhanced your life or your abilities in some way. Pause the video now to work on this question. In partners or small groups, use your notes to help you rehearse your answers. You can give each other feedback to improve the answers. After you've practiced each question a couple of times, try to practice without looking at your sheet as much. And remember, try to make eye contact with the person that you are talking with. And your task for this week is to create your answers with a partner or small group. Use your notes to help you rehearse your answers and give each other suggestions to improve these answers. Then you can open your portfolio in My Blueprint and you can add them to it. You can choose Add Box and you will either create a journal box titled More Interview Questions, and you can copy your answers into the journal box where it says description. This works if you've been typing your answers on some kind of device. Or if you wrote them on paper, you can take a picture and instead of adding a journal box, you'll choose Add Media, Add File, then you can find and upload your picture. If you have time, you can try practicing more while referring to your notes less. That's it for this week. Have a great week.